Thank you very much. Thank you for being here today. It's a great honor to be here today. And I'm not only speaking in my role as a social development specialist and actually as a doctor, because I'm a medical doctor by background, but I'm also speaking on behalf of our regional cooperation colleagues who wanted to be here today and who then unfortunately had other commitments, and so they asked me to present on their behalf on some of the developments in regional cooperation in the Greater Mekong sub-region. So this work that we are discussing today brings together 3 years of experience and engagement with you on health impact assessment and 50 years of experience in regional cooperation. Regional cooperation is really part of ADB's, as we call it, DNA. It's part of our genetic background. ADB was founded in 1966, and at that time, it was actually a development bank in one of the poorest regions in the world, as you know. And we focused a lot on agriculture, food security, and regional cooperation in that regard. And then now, 50 years later, the Asian Development Bank is the largest development bank in Asia, with a lending volume of $30 billion, 20 billion from our own resources, 10 billion from co-financing. And usually when I ask people, do you know the ADB? They know ADB as the infrastructure bank. And when I joined ADB 10 years ago, I was told, as a health person, you have no career in ADB. We are really doing infrastructure. So I'm very glad actually to be still here after 10 years and have been involved to rebuild ADB's health sector. We now have the commitment of reaching 5% of total lending in health. And we also made it very clear that health is part of everything, and that without health you cannot have good development. So on our new strategy 2030, which you can find online, you will see that we are now moving away from traditional sectors to priority areas. And the number one most important priority is to reduce remaining poverty and inequalities. And obviously, our work on integrated development is very important in that sense. So we waited 10 years to really make it a key priority of the bank, integrated development. But now let me share a few facts with you about the Greater Mekong Sub-Region Economic Cooperation Program. This program was established in 1992 with the assistance from the Asian Development Bank, because there was an agreement that there needs to be more strategic investments in infrastructure cooperation in this region. Obviously, you have the ASEAN cooperation, but then the GMS is actually more action-oriented and focuses more on investments. And in the last 3 years alone, ADB has invested $1.65 billion in infrastructure in this region, and other partners around $700 million. So there's more and more investments coming. The strategic priority is, as you know, a more integrated, prosperous, and harmonious sub-region, which is very well connected. And all of this is underpinned by strategies. And the most important one, which I would like to highlight, and I brought a copy of that in my bag, is the Hanoi Action Plan, which was approved in 2018. And this action plan includes a stronger emphasis now again on integrated development and on human development and health. So that's one of the achievements, and this helps us to make our work very relevant for ADB's GMS investments. This Hanoi Action Plan is supported by an investment framework, and this investment framework explains in which sectors ADB would invest in, and health is one of those sectors. So is obviously environment, infrastructure, and so on. I thought I'd share with you this very impressive map which shows you the development of this sub-region since 1992. So 1992 you see on the very right side, and then you see how roads, telecommunication, and power lines increased and improved in this region. Obviously, this is very good for trade and economic development, but it brings all kinds of diseases and issues, and which come with mobility of people and goods and animals and so on. So a very connected region. I'm not going into much detail here, but I wanted to show you in where we are right now in the south of Vietnam, and then obviously Cambodia, Thailand, all kinds of projects that have been happening, and share these slides with you. So you can see many of those are co-financed by ADB and others, many friendship bridges and border posts and so on. And I was looking for some really interesting results on the impact that improved connectivity and investments in transport corridors have. And I found this one here, and this shows that in 1999, the travel time from Phnom Penh to Ho Chi Minh City was 10 hours, around 10 hours. And the trade between Mok Bai and Ba Viet, the cross-border border points in these areas, was around $10 million a year. In 2014, the travel time halved. The cross-border trade is at $708 million per year. There are several industrial zones, just to name this industrial park, which created 30,000 jobs and 270 million of new investments. So all of this is great for economic development and growth, but obviously only if the people around these zones can actually benefit. So I'm now going a little bit into some of the sectors that the GMS Regional Cooperation Program supports, just because I would like to show you and discuss that in all of these sectors, health actually plays an important part. So one area that the cooperation, the GMS cooperation focuses on is trade and border development. And the goal is to have free movement of vehicles, goods, and so on, and have these single stop inspections. And there was an MOU signed on cross-border trade. It's called the Early Harvest Implementation. And there are a few pilots between Vietnam and China to have that, and there are already existing one-stop inspections and free movement of goods and vehicles and freer trade between several other countries. So obviously this is positive, but it also brings certain health risks. The other area, of course, is energy, and there it's mostly about energy trade currently. So transmission lines are connected, but basically it's energy trade between several countries. When it comes to agriculture, there's a focus on value chain integration to benefit the smallholder farm, the smaller farmers in this region. Obviously, there are also health-related issues in terms of pesticide use, severe agricultural practices, and so on. So there we also have an important role to play. And then obviously tourism. I mean, it's one of the most popular areas in Europe and in Australia and other areas of the world to actually visit Southeast Asia. And the tourism industry really increased tremendously in 2016. 16 million people came to this region per year, and obviously I think this is, as we all know, this is increasing. So ADB is also supporting several tourism projects, and obviously for tourism, important is that this region is free of vector-borne diseases or malaria or drug-resistant malaria. An increasingly important component of this regional cooperation program is environment, because lots of people are realizing, well, we should not have economic growth at the cost of environment. We already have huge problems with deforestation, with salination of the Mekong riverbeds, of pollution from all kinds of industrial productions and so on. So that's another entry point for us in health, to work with the environmental ministers and to make sure that in their frameworks and action plans, health impact assessment is an important part. And then obviously there's urban development. And there, the leaders agreed that they want to have more development of secondary cities, more development of border areas, and actually under this border development strategy, investments in economic zones became the most strategic part to create these engines of growth outside the main capitals in these border areas and secondary towns. and connect those together, and through that support economic development in a more equitable way. So in a way, the shift is from growth engines and capitals to growth engines in these new economic zones in these new cities. And all of that obviously needs to be underpinned by human development, which was, to be honest, a little bit neglected in the last years in this whole GMS work, because it did focus a lot on transport corridors. But then in the last year, and also with our support, it became again more prominent, and I'm very happy to have here actually members of the GMS Health Working Group today. Maybe can you raise your hands? Who is member of the GMS Health Working Group? One? Okay, one. We have one. At least we have one. So we have one champion who will bring back this work on health impact assessment to the GMS Working Group. And a very important part is, and that's something we also need to discuss today, is how all these investments are enabling the environment for the private sector. Because obviously, if you from the public sector invest in infrastructure, trade facilitation, human development, then the businesses and the GMS will come and invest more. But we need to make sure that they actually have responsible operations when they come to these zones. Now, on economic zones, since it's becoming a more and more important part of ADB's investments in the Greater Mekong sub-region, there were some studies done, and what we saw is that they do attract investments, but what they also do is they enable structural change, and that can be positive for communities, but it can also be disrupting. And if we do not develop the areas around these zones, actually then people don't benefit that much. Studies from Cambodia showed that the impact of economic zones on poverty around these zones was minimal. So that's something we really want to address. And then of course we need to have crucial inputs like water, wastewater disposal, waste disposal, and workers' health to make these special economic zones work. And Janice and Felipe will talk more about it. So now, before I close, I wanted to give you an overview of the highlights of the last year, of what we've done. We really started to engage more on the topic of special economic zones or economic zones in April last year, after we have done a lot of work on health impact assessment and have worked with countries on strengthening their policies, their guidelines. We had several demonstration projects in other sectors, and then we said, well, everything comes together in these economic zones, so this is where we should actually focus some of our attention on, because this is where we can use health impact assessment as a management tool for cross-sector development. So we started to work in April. We engaged with Thailand and Laos. Thank you also, colleagues, for being here. And we worked with one of the special economic zones on developing a framework on how to engage with leaders and decision makers in these zones, and more about it later. And then we brought it all together at a forum in November, published this framework, and actually discussed 3 paradigm shifts. And I want to go quickly with you through these 3 paradigm shifts, which hopefully you agree with and we can promote after this forum today. So the most important one is that health impact assessment is done in addition to environmental assessment, that it becomes an integral part of the policies and guidelines for special economic zones, and that we reinforce those. And Myanmar is working very strongly on that to make sure that it becomes a mandatory component. The next one is we should make sure that these economic zones are actually certified, that they are health certified, and that businesses who come there get certified that they contribute to the health of their workers and the surrounding areas. And Thailand has some good examples there. And the third one is that health impact assessment becomes a management tool to bring these different sectors. Is it the industrial development? Is it the transport? Is it environment or human development? It brings it all together and helps in a very complicated, helps to address a complicated issue of cross-sector coordination. So we want to make sure that it becomes a management tool for people in economic zones. So from today onwards, what we want to do is make sure this work becomes a fundamental part of ADB's Greater Mekong Sub-Region Investment Framework, and that by supporting countries to invest in it, that countries are asking for it, but also that ADB is able to respond to this request for support on health impact assessment. So with that, I thank you very much. I'm looking forward to a very engaging discussion. One last word. The work here, what we do, will be continued, as I said, through our colleagues in regional cooperation. And I will have the pleasure to move on to a new role to work on innovation in the bank. And I would see our work here as very innovative. So even in that role, I'll be able to continue to work with you. Thank you.